Hello, everyone. Welcome to week eight. Week eight, we're going to be covering the legal system as it pertains to health law, particularly health information management. So, what we're going to do is start off with the first video lecture, which is going to cover the foundations of health law and introduce the U.S. legal system. If you've been watching the news, especially this past year, you'll be familiar with a lot of these terms that we discuss involving the legal system. We'll talk about disputes, lawsuits, arbitration, and other terms. The second video lecture will get into the legal process and professional liability. In other words, who's responsible for an action. We always think of healthcare laws involving medical malpractice, but there are many other types of legal things that do happen involving healthcare law and ethics. And then finally, we'll get into, I think, a more interesting part of healthcare law, which covers patient rights, compliance, and health records. We'll talk about creating, maintaining, and destroying health records. We'll talk about compliance. We'll talk about auditing. And we'll have some real world examples. You have a case study to work through. And I think you'll all find it very, very interesting. As a lot of the things that are mentioned in this chapter are things that, if you're working in healthcare, you probably already have some exposure to. And if you're not, certainly you may have had exposure to the legal system through other means. Unfortunately, for the video lectures, I'm still working to get the software vendor that allows me to put embedded questions in the video lectures to give me access. So I am working diligently on that. I hope to have a resolution for you very, very soon, certainly by Tuesday. That's all I have for you. Have a great week, and we'll see you online. Bye now.